Good evening, hello, and welcome to Chilliteracy. Happy Wednesday. How are we all doing? I hope we are well. Yes, hello. Yeah, I hope we're all well. Hope we're doing all right. Hope the week's being kind to us, and the yawning begins. Oh dear. Yeah. What's everybody been up to this week so far? I hope we're all doing well. What have I been up to? Have I been up to anything interesting? Not really. 2 weeks until you go to the UK again. Ooh, that's exciting. Very exciting indeed. Is that for anything particular? I'm in Germany next week for 2 days, and then I'm in Paris. Which I haven't been to Paris in years, so that should be fun. I say fun, I mean it's for work, but it'll still be fun. But yeah. Oh, you're doing the TLJ gigs. Nice, with your friend. Oh, and you're going to Oxford as well. Excellent. You took next week off work. Yay, to catch up on housework. Boo. Yeah, that's a good thing and a bad thing. I hope that the housework takes less time than you think it will, so you have more time off. Fingers crossed. And yeah, Peroda, I hope the TLJ gigs are good. Yeah, should be fun. From your mouth to God's ears. Yeah. Let's hope. Yeah. I'm trying to think if I've been doing anything interesting with my life in the last few weeks. Oh, excuse me. I don't know. London gig, go to Oxford. Bath gig, back to Oxford for almost a month. Ooh, fun. And then Bristol Harbour Festival. Nice. Your house shouldn't get dirty while you're not in it. It's not fair. Yeah. No, good point. What have I done? Oh, I was in Somerset / Wiltshire last weekend, looking at various Neolithic things. For I am a bit of a nerd with regards to that. Sort of a belated kind of birthday trip. So we went, where did we go to? Stony Littleton Long Barrow, which is a long barrow. I'm now going to talk about Neolithic, boring stuff. It's a long barrow that I've wanted to visit for ages because it's one of the best preserved ones in Britain. And it's like they have done such a good job at preserving it. It's really, really good. So went there, went to Stanton Drew Stone Circle. It's fine. I'm a snob. I'm not a snob when it comes to stone circles, but like I've seen the good ones. Like, well, obviously Stonehenge. Avebury's quite something. Orkney just is the best for them, in my opinion. And then, yeah, I mean, Stanton Drew's good, but it's kind of a late one. Sam jokingly said something along the lines of, oh, is it just like just jumping on the bandwagon? It's like, well, actually, historically, technically, yes. But yeah, so that was fun. And then we also went to possibly my favourite named Neolithic thing in the UK, which is Marden Superhenge. I didn't realise it's actually called that. I thought my dad was making a joke. No, it is what's known as a superhenge, aka it's bloody enormous. If anybody here is either from the UK or has visited Avebury, Avebury is a stone circle and a henge. So, fun fact, a henge is not the stones. A henge is the bank, like the bank and ditch that the stones are on. And Avebury is pretty impressive because it is a very large stone circle and henge, and it encompasses like a good few houses. Like there's just a village, or a bit of a village in the middle of it. However, you can still see pretty much the whole henge when you're standing on like one bit of it. Marden Superhenge you can't. You can just about see it aerially. If you look on Google Maps, you can see it. to a certain extent. It's enormous. No stones left, but but the banks are still left. And yeah, it basically just encompasses this entire little hamlet. And yeah, is enormous. No one really knows why, but you know, our ancestors like doing things big. So that was entertaining. But I just love the idea of it being a super henge. So that was fun. And did I see anything else interesting, stone-wise? We were going to go visit Cheddar Gorge, not least because it's a pretty spectacular place, but also because it is home to, Cheddar Man, which was a skeleton unearthed a number of years back, and I can't remember if he was Neolithic or Paleolithic, but there's certainly some Paleolithic stuff there. So it's an old area, and there's cool stuff. So yeah, but yeah, Stony Littleton Long Barrow. If anybody is interested in this kind of stuff, and is ever in the UK or around the sort of Wiltshire, Somerset area, go visit Stony Littleton Long Barrow, because it is a really brilliant example of a very, very sympathetically preserved long barrow. They put, I can't remember when, but they put in iron or steel supports in the long barrow, but they're not intrusive, and inside is still all stone and stuff, and it's at one point you don't actually, I don't have to, but I am small, don't even have to bend double, so it's quite something, and it is silent in there. It is kind of awesome. You walk in and it's just there's no sound. This is great. Just acoustically completely insulated. Also, we were approaching along this road that was the width of a car at most. Turns out it's actually a very, very well maintained cycleway, and also a road. Cars are allowed down it as well. But yeah, it's a no pothole in sight. And excuse me. And is part of a very good cycleway. But driving down to the very, very small little car park that's there, because Stony Littleton is an English heritage site, and there's just a house, just the guy who owns the farm, I think, that's kind of in that area. And as we approached, he got out of his house, and there's a little wooden shack next to his house, a little wooden shed, and there's a little seating area that's got a fence around it with a picnic bench and a normal bench, the little gate that obviously looks like it's kind of a public seating area, and he gets out of his house, and he goes to his little shed, and he slides the little thing on the door to open, and he puts a little Marshfields ice cream flag next to the shed. It's oh, that's so cute, he's got a little ice cream shed. And then we felt really bad because we didn't buy an ice cream from him, but hopefully the cyclists bought some ice creams that came past after us. That's the hope. But yeah, that made my day. It's just he was so excited to see people. But yes, that was my very exciting weekend. It was adorable. He was so smiley and friendly as well. It was lovely. He's you know where you're going? I was yep, thanks. Yeah, very, very sweet man. Also, hello Llama, and hello Lady Mephistopheles. Hope we're all well. I was just telling people of my weekend, looking at various Neolithic things. Yeah. And also went to Root, which is a restaurant that originated in Bristol and now has another one of it. It's not really a chain, it's just two restaurants, one in Wells, one in Bristol, and they are a lot of it. It's not vegetarian, but most of it is vegetarian, and yeah, it's sharing plates, tapas style stuff, but it's absolutely fantastic. So strong recommend for anybody who goes to Bristol, I guess. Root, very good. So yeah, that was my very exciting weekend and stuff. But we are on to Barchester Towers, and if we can all vaguely remember what happened last time, we've got even more drama. The bishop has finally stood up to his lady wife, which has obviously made her more determined to, have her way. She and Mr. Slope are now sworn enemies, so they are trying to sort of, foil each other's plans as and when they can. Mr. Slope is hopelessly in love with Madame Neroni, who is just twisting him round her finger and thoroughly enjoying it. And as an audience who, Mr. Slope isn't exactly the person we're cheering for, we kind of enjoyed that. So yeah, that was quite an entertaining course of events. And that was kind of where we left it, I guess. Yeah. Oh, yes. And then Mr. Slope sent Eleanor, who is Mr. Harding's daughter, sent her a letter that was just a little bit smarmy. She didn't like it, but all of her, family and stuff are going, oh, well, Mr. Slope sent you a letter. That means that you're in Mr. Slope's confidences and stuff, and we don't like. Yeah, we blamed people for receiving letters from people we don't like. Yeah, basically that's what happened. And she didn't explain herself, so the classic, oh, if only you'd just explained things. But she didn't, so I'm sure that's going to be absolutely fine. And she has been summoned to the office of Dr. Grantley, her brother-in-law, who is, Mr. Slope's a sworn enemy. He hates him. So we'll see how that goes. So if we're all sitting comfortably, the text is pinned at the top of chat. I guess let's see what chaos ensues next in Barchester Towers. As Andy says there, this can only go well, I'm sure. Right, let us begin. Barchester Towers, Chapter 29. A serious interview. There are people who delight in serious interviews, especially when to them appertains the part of offering advice or administering rebuke, and perhaps the Archdeacon was one of these. Yet on this occasion he did not prepare himself for the coming conversation with much anticipation of pleasure. Whatever might be his faults, he was not an inhospitable man, and he almost felt that he was sinning against hospitality in upbraiding Eleanor in his own house. Then, also, he was not quite sure that he would get the best of it. His wife had told him that he decidedly would not, and he usually gave credit to what his wife said. He was, however, so convinced of what he considered to be the impropriety of Eleanor's conduct, and so assured also of his own duty in trying to check it, that his conscience would not allow him to take his wife's advice and go to bed quietly. Eleanor's face as she entered the room was not such as to reassure him. As a rule, she was always mild in manner and gentle in conduct, but there was that in her eye which made it not an easy task to scold her. In truth, she had been little used to scolding. No one since her childhood had tried it but the Archdeacon, and he had generally failed when he did try it. He had never done so since her marriage, and now, when he saw her quiet, easy step as she entered his room, he almost wished that he had taken his wife's advice. He began by apologising for the trouble he was giving her. She begged him not to mention it, assured him that walking downstairs was no trouble to her at all, and then took a seat and waited patiently for him to begin his attack. "My dear Eleanor," he said, "I hope you believe me when I assure you that you have no sincerer friend than I am." To this Eleanor answered nothing, and therefore he proceeded. "If you had a brother of your own, I should not probably trouble you with what I am going to say, But as it is, I cannot but think that it must be a comfort to you to know that you have near you one who is as anxious for your welfare as any brother of your own could be." "I never had a brother," said she. "I know you never had, and it is therefore that I speak to you." "I never had a brother," she repeated, "but I have hardly felt the want. Papa has been to me both father and brother." "Your father is the fondest and most affectionate of men, but—" "He is the fondest and most affectionate of men, and the best of counsellors. While he lives, I can never want advice." This rather put the Archdeacon out. He could not exactly contradict what his sister-in-law said about her father, and yet he did not at all agree with her. He wanted her to understand that he tendered his assistance because her father was a soft, good-natured gentleman, not sufficiently knowing in the ways of the world, but he could not say this to her. So he had to rush into the subject matter of his proffered counsel without any acknowledgment on her part that she could need it, or would be grateful for it. "Susan tells me that you received a letter this evening from Mr. Slope." "Yes, Papa brought it in the brougham. Did he not tell you?" "And Susan says that you objected to let her know what it was about." "I don't think she asked me. But had she done so, I should not have told her. I don't think it nice to be asked about one's letters. If one wishes to show them, one does so without being asked." "True, quite so. What you say is quite true, but is not the fact of your receiving letters from Mr. Slope, which you do not wish to show to your friends, a circumstance which must excite some surprise, some suspicion?" "Suspicion?" said she, not speaking above her usual voice, speaking still in a soft womanly tone, but yet with indignation. "Suspicion? And who suspects me? And of what?" And then there was a pause, for the Archdeacon was not quite ready to explain the ground of his suspicion. "No, Dr. Grantley, I did not choose to show Mr. Slope's letter to Susan. I could not show it to anyone till Papa had seen it. If you have any wish to read it now, you can do so." And she handed the letter to him over the table. This was an amount of compliance which he had not at all expected, and which rather upset him in his tactics. However, he took the letter, perused it carefully, and then, refolding it, kept it on the table under his hand. To him it appeared to be in almost every respect the letter of a declared lover. It seemed to corroborate his worst suspicions, and the fact of Eleanor's showing it to him was all but tantamount to a declaration on her part that it was her pleasure to receive love letters from Mr. Slope. He almost entirely overlooked the real subject matter of the epistle, so intent was he on the forthcoming courtship and marriage. "I'll thank you to give it me back, if you please, Dr. Grantley." He took it in his hand and held it up, but made no immediate overture to return it. "And Mr. Harding has seen this?" said he. "Of course he has," said she. "It was written that he might see it. It refers solely to his business, and of course I showed it to him." "And, Eleanor, do you think that is a proper letter for you, for a person in your condition, to receive from Mr. Slope?" "Quite a proper letter," said she, speaking perhaps a little out of obstinacy, probably forgetting at the moment the objectionable mention of her silken curls. "Then, Eleanor, it is my duty to tell you that I wholly differ from you." "From you." "So I suppose," said she, instigated now by sheer opposition and determination not to succumb. "You think Mr. Slope is a messenger direct from Satan. I think he is an industrious, well-meaning clergyman. It's a pity that we differ as we do, But as we do differ, we had probably better not talk about it." Here Eleanor undoubtedly put herself in the wrong. She might probably have refused to talk to Dr. Grantley on the matter in dispute without any impropriety, but having consented to listen to him, she had no business to tell him that he regarded Mr. Slope as an emissary from the evil one, nor was she justified in praising Mr. Slope, seeing that in her heart of hearts she did not think well of him. She was, however, wounded in spirit, and angry and bitter. She had been subjected to contumely and cross-questioning and ill-usage through the whole evening. No one, not even Mr. Arabin, not even her father, had been kind to her. All this she attributed to the prejudice and conceit of the Archdeacon, and therefore she resolved to set no bounds to her antagonism to him. She would neither give nor take quarter. He had greatly presumed in daring to question her about her correspondence, and she was determined to show that she thought so. "Eleanor, you are forgetting yourself," said he, looking very sternly at her. "Otherwise you would never tell me that I conceive any man to be a messenger from Satan." "But you do," said she. "Nothing is too bad for him. Give me that letter, if you please." And she stretched out her hand and took it from him. "He has been doing his best to serve Papa, doing more than any of Papa's friends could do, and yet because he is the chaplain of a bishop whom you don't like, you speak of him as though he had no right to the usage of a gentleman." "He has done nothing for your father." "I believe that he has done a great deal, and as far as I am concerned, I am grateful to him. Nothing that you can say can prevent my being so. I judge people by their acts, and his, as far as I can see them, are good." She then paused for a moment. "If you have nothing further to say, I shall be obliged by being permitted to say good night. I am very tired." Dr. Grantley had, as he thought, done his best to be gracious to his sister-in-law. He had endeavoured not to be harsh to her, and had striven to pluck the sting from his rebuke. But he did not intend that she should leave him without hearing. "I have something to say, Eleanor, and I fear I must trouble you to hear it. You profess that it is quite proper that you should receive from Mr. Slope such letters as that you have in your hand. Susan and I think very differently. You are, of course, your own mistress, and much as we both must grieve should anything separate you from us, we have no power to prevent you from taking steps which may lead to such a separation. If you are so wilful as to reject the counsel of your friends, you must be allowed to cater for yourself. But, Eleanor, I may at any rate ask you this. Is it worth your while to break away from all those you have loved, from all who love you, for the sake of Mr. Slope?" "I don't know what you mean, Dr. Grantley. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't want to break away from anybody." "But you will do so if you connect yourself with Mr. Slope. Eleanor, I must speak out to you. You must choose between your sister and myself and our friends, and Mr. Slope and his friends. I say nothing of your father, as you may probably understand his feelings better than I do." "What do you mean, Dr. Grantley? What am I to understand? I never heard such wicked prejudice in my life." "It is no prejudice, Eleanor. I have known the world longer than you have done. Mr. Slope is altogether beneath you. You ought to know and feel that he is so. Pray think of this before it is too late." "Too late?" "Or, if you will not believe me, ask Susan. You cannot think she is prejudiced against you. Or even consult your father. He is not prejudiced against you. Ask Mr. Arabin." "You haven't spoken to Mr. Arabin about this?" said she, jumping up and standing before him. "Eleanor, all the world in and about Barchester will be speaking of it soon," But have you spoken to Mr. Arabin about me and Mr. Slope? Certainly I have, and he quite agrees with me. Agrees with what? Said she. I think you are trying to drive me mad. He agrees with me and Susan that it is quite impossible you should be received at Plumstead as Mrs. Slope. Not being favourites with the tragic muse, we do not dare to attempt any description of Eleanor's face when she first heard the name of Mrs. Slope pronounced as that which would or should or might at some time appertain to herself. The look, such as it was, Dr. Grantley did not soon forget. For a moment or two she could find no words to express her deep anger and deep disgust, and indeed at this conjuncture words did not come to her very freely. "How dare you be so impertinent?" at last she said, and then hurried out of the room without giving the Archdeacon the opportunity of uttering another word. It was with difficulty she contained herself till she reached her own room, and then, locking the door, she threw herself on her bed and sobbed as though her heart would break. But even yet she had no conception of the truth. She had no idea that her father and her sister had for days past conceived in sober earnest the idea that she was going to marry this man. She did not even then believe that the Archdeacon thought that she would do so. By some manoeuvre of her brain, she attributed to the origin of the accusation to Mr. Arabin, and as she did so her anger against him was excessive, and the vexation of her spirit almost unendurable. She could not bring herself to think that the charge was made seriously. It appeared to her most probable that the Archdeacon and Mr. Arabin had talked over the objectionable acquaintance with Mr. Slope, that Mr. Arabin, in his jeering, sarcastic way, had suggested the odious match as being the severest way of treating with contumely her acquaintance with his enemy, and that the Archdeacon, taking the idea from him, thought proper to punish her by the allusion. The whole night she lay awake, thinking of what had been said, and this appeared to be the most probable solution. But the reflection that Mr. Arabin should have in any way mentioned her name in connection with that of Mr. Slope was overpowering, and the spiteful ill nature of the Archdeacon in repeating the charge to her made her wish to leave his house almost before the day had broken. One thing was certain. Nothing should make her stay there beyond the following morning, and nothing should make her sit down to breakfast in company with Dr. Grantley. When she thought of the man whose name had been linked with her own, she cried from sheer disgust. It was only because she would be thus disgusted, thus pained and shocked and cut to the quick, that the Archdeacon had spoken the horrid word. He wanted to make her quarrel with Mr. Slope, and therefore he had outraged her by his abominable vulgarity. She determined that at any rate he should know that she appreciated it. Nor was the Archdeacon a bit better satisfied with the result of his serious interview than was Eleanor. He gathered from it, as indeed he could hardly fail to do, that she was very angry with him. But he thought that she was thus angry not because she was suspected of an intention to marry Mr. Slope, but because such an intention was imputed to her as a crime. Dr. Grantley regarded this supposed union with disgust, but it never occurred to him that Eleanor was outraged because she looked at it exactly in the same light. He returned to his wife, vexed and somewhat disconsolate, but nevertheless confirmed in his wrath against his sister-in-law. "Her whole behaviour," said he, "has been most objectionable. She handed me his love letter to read as though she were proud of it. And she is proud of it. She is proud of having this slavering, greedy man at her feet. She will throw herself and John Bold's money into his lap. She will ruin her boy, disgrace her father and you, and be a wretched, miserable woman." His spouse, who was sitting at her toilette table, continued her avocations, making no answer to all this. She had known that the Archdeacon would gain nothing by interfering, but she was too charitable to provoke him by saying so while he was in such deep sorrow. "This comes of a man making such a will as that of Bold's," he continued. "Eleanor is no more fitted to be trusted with such an amount of money in her own hands than is a charity school girl." Still Mrs. Grantley made no reply. "But I have done my duty. I can do nothing further. I have told her plainly that she cannot be allowed to form a link of connection between me and that man. From henceforward it will not be in my power to make her welcome at Plumstead. I cannot have Mr. Slope's love letters coming here. Susan, I think you had better let her understand that as her mind on this subject seems to be irrevocably fixed, it will be better for all parties that she should return to Barchester." Now Mrs. Grantley was angry with Eleanor, nearly as angry as her husband, but she had no idea of turning her sister out of the house. She, therefore, at length spoke out, and explained to the Archdeacon, in her own mild, seducing way, that he was fuming and fussing and fretting himself very unnecessarily. She declared that things, if left alone, would arrange themselves much better than he could arrange them, and at last succeeded in inducing him to go to bed in a somewhat less inhospitable state of mind. On the following morning, Eleanor's maid was commissioned to send word into the dining-room that her mistress was not well enough to attend prayers, and that she would breakfast in her own room. Here she was visited by her father, and declared to him her intention of returning immediately to Barchester. He was hardly surprised by the announcement. All the household seemed to be aware that something had gone wrong. Everyone walked about with subdued feet, and people's shoes seemed to creak more than usual. There was a look of conscious intelligence on the faces of the women, and the men attempted, but in vain, to converse as though nothing were the matter. All this had weighed heavily on the heart of Mr. Harding, and when Eleanor told him that her immediate return to Barchester was a necessity, he merely sighed piteously, and said that he would be ready to accompany her. But here she objected strenuously. She had a great wish, she said, to go alone, a great desire that it might be seen that her father was not implicated in her quarrel with Dr. Grantley. To this, at last, he gave way. But not a word passed between them about Mr. Slope. Not a word was said, not a question asked as to the serious interview on the preceding evening. There was, indeed, very little confidence between them, though neither of them knew why it should be so. Eleanor once asked him whether he would not call upon the bishop, but he answered rather tartly that he did not know. He did not think he should, but he could not say just at present. And so they parted. Each was miserably anxious for some show of affection, for some return of confidence, for some sign of the feeling that usually bound them together. But none was given. The father could not bring himself to question his daughter about her supposed lover, and the daughter would not sully her mouth by repeating the odious word with which Dr. Grantley had roused her wrath. And so they parted. There was some trouble in arranging the method of Eleanor's return. She begged her father to send for a post-chaise, but when Mrs. Grantley heard of this, she objected strongly. If Eleanor would go away in dudgeon with the Archdeacon, why should she let all the servants and all the neighbourhood know that she had done so? So, at last, Eleanor consented to make use of the Plumstead carriage, and as the Archdeacon had gone out immediately after breakfast and was not to return till dinner-time, she also consented to postpone her journey till after lunch, and to join the family at that time. As to the subject of the quarrel, not a word was said by anyone. the affair of the carriage was arranged by Mr. Harding, who acted as Mercury between the two ladies. They, when they met, kissed each other very lovingly, and then sat down each to her crochet work, as though nothing was amiss in all the world. Chapter 30. Another love scene. But there was another visitor at the rectory, whose feelings in this unfortunate matter must be somewhat strictly analysed. Mr. Arabin had heard from his friend of the probability of Eleanor's marriage with Mr. Slope with amazement, but not with incredulity. It has been said that he was not in love with Eleanor, and up to this period this certainly had been true. But as soon as he heard that she loved someone else, he began to be very fond of her himself. He did not make up his mind that he wished to have her for his wife. He had never thought of her, and did not now think of her, in connection with himself, but he experienced an inward, indefinable feeling of deep regret, a gnawing sorrow, an unconquerable depression of spirits, and also a species of self-abasement that he, Mr. Arabin, had not done something to prevent that other he, that vile he whom he so thoroughly despised, from carrying off this sweet prize. Whatever man may have reached the age of 40 unmarried without knowing something of such feelings must have been very successful, or else very cold-hearted. Mr. Arabin had never thought of trimming the sails of his bark so that he might sail as convoy to this rich argosy. He had seen that Mrs. Bold was beautiful, but he had not dreamt of making her beauty his own. He knew that Mrs. Bold was rich, but he had no more idea of appropriating her wealth than that of Dr. Grantley. He had discovered that Mrs. Bold was intelligent, warm-hearted, agreeable, sensible, all, in fact, that a man could wish his wife to be, but the higher were her attractions, the greater her claims to consideration, the less had he imagined that he might possibly become the possessor of them. Such had been his instinct rather than his thoughts, so humble and so diffident. Now his diffidence was to be rewarded by his seeing this woman, whose beauty was to his eyes perfect, whose wealth was such as to have deterred him from thinking of her, whose widowhood would have silenced him had he not been so deterred, by his seeing her become the prey of Obadiah Slope. On the morning of Mrs. Bold's departure, he got on his horse to ride over to St. Ewolds. As he rode, he kept muttering to himself a line from Van Artevelde: "How little flattering is woman's love." And then he strove to recall his mind and to think of other affairs, his parish, his college, his creed, but his thoughts would revert to Mr. Slope and the Flemish chieftain. When we think upon it, how little flattering is woman's love, given commonly to whosoe'er is nearest, and propped with most advantage. It was not that Mrs. Bold should marry any one but him. He had not put himself forward as a suitor, but that she should marry Mr. Slope. And so he repeated over again: "Outward grace nor inward light is needful. Day by day, men wanting both are mated with the best and loftiest of God's feminine creation, whose love takes no distinction but of gender, and ridicules the very name of choice." And so he went on, troubled much in his mind. He had but an uneasy ride of it that morning, and little good did he do at St. Ewolds. The necessary alterations in his house were being fast completed, and he walked through the rooms, and went up and down the stairs, and rambled through the garden. But he could not wake himself to much interest about them. He stood still at every window to look out and think upon Mr. Slope. At almost every window he had before stood and chatted with Eleanor. She and Mrs. Grantley had been there continually, and while Mrs. Grantley had been giving orders and seeing that orders had been complied with, he and Eleanor had conversed on all things appertaining to a clergyman's profession. He thought how often he had laid down the law to her, and how sweetly she had borne with his somewhat dictatorial decrees. He remembered her listening intelligence, her gentle but quick replies, her interest in all that concerned the church, in all that concerned him. And then he struck his riding whip against the window-sill and declared to himself that it was impossible that Eleanor Bold should marry Mr. Slope. And yet he did not really believe, as he should have done, that it was impossible. He should have known her well enough to feel that it was truly impossible. He should have been aware that Eleanor had that within her which would surely protect her from such degradation. But he, like so many others, was deficient in confidence in woman. He said to himself over and over again that it was impossible that Eleanor Bold should become Mrs. Slope, and yet he believed that she would do so. And so he rambled about, and could do and think of nothing. He was thoroughly uncomfortable, thoroughly ill at ease, cross with himself and everybody else, and feeding in his heart on animosity towards Mr. Slope. This was not as it should be, as he knew and felt. But he could not help himself. In truth, Mr. Arabin was now in love with Mrs. Bold, though ignorant of the fact himself. He was in love, and, though 40 years old, was in love without being aware of it. He fumed and fretted, and did not know what was the matter, as a youth might do at 21. And so, having done no good at St. Ewald's, he rode back much earlier than was usual with him, instigated by some inward unacknowledged hope that he might see Mrs. Bold before she left. Eleanor had not passed a very pleasant morning. She was irritated with everyone, and not least with herself. She felt that she had been hardly used, but she felt also that she had not played her own cards well. She should have held herself so far above suspicion as to have received her sister's innuendos and the Archdeacon's lecture with indifference. She had not done this, but had shown herself angry and sore, and was now ashamed of her own petulance, and yet unable to discontinue it. The greater part of the morning she had spent alone, but after a while her father joined her. He had fully made up his mind that, come what might, nothing should separate him from his younger daughter. It was a hard task for him to reconcile himself to the idea of seeing her at the head of Mr. Slope's table, but he got through it. Mr. Slope, as he argued to himself, was a respectable man and a clergyman, and he, as Eleanor's father, had no right even to endeavour to prevent her from marrying such a one. He longed to tell her how he had determined to prefer her to all the world, how he was prepared to admit that she was not wrong, how thoroughly he differed from Dr. Grantley, but he could not bring himself to mention Mr. Slope's name. There was yet a chance that they were all wrong in their surmise, and, being thus in doubt, he could not bring himself to speak openly to her on the subject. He was sitting with her in the drawing-room, with his arm round her waist, saying every now and then some little soft words of affection, and working hard with his imaginary fiddle bow, when Mr. Arabin entered the room. He immediately got up, and the two made some trite remarks to each other, neither thinking of what he was saying, while Eleanor kept her seat on the sofa, mute and moody. Mr. Arabin was included in the list of those against whom her anger was excited. He, too, had dared to talk about her acquaintance with Mr. Slope. He too had dared to blame her for not making an enemy of his enemy. She had not intended to see him before her departure, and was now but little inclined to be gracious. There was a feeling through the whole house that something was wrong. Mr. Arabin, when he saw Eleanor, could not succeed in looking or in speaking as though he knew nothing of all this. He could not be cheerful and positive and contradictory with her, as was his wont. He had not been 2 minutes in the room before he felt that he had done wrong to return, and the moment he heard her voice, he thoroughly wished himself back at St. Ewolds. Why, indeed, should he have wished to have aught further to say to the future wife of Mr. Slope? "I am sorry to hear that you are to leave us so soon," said he, striving in vain to use his ordinary voice. In answer to this she muttered something about the necessity of her being in Barchester, and betook herself most industriously to her crochet work. Then there was a little more trite conversation between Mr. Arabin and Mr. Harding, trite and hard and vapid and senseless. Neither of them had anything to say to the other, and yet neither at such a moment liked to remain silent. At last Mr. Harding, taking advantage of a pause, escaped out of the room, and Eleanor and Mr. Arabin were left together. "Your going will be a great break-up to our party," said he. She again muttered something which was all but inaudible, but kept her eyes fixed upon her work. "We have had a very pleasant month here," said he. "At least I have, and I am sorry it should be so soon over." "I have already been from home longer than I intended," said she, "and it is time that I should return." "Well, pleasant hours and pleasant days must come to an end. It is a pity that so few of them are pleasant, or perhaps, rather, it is a pity, certainly, that men and women do so much to destroy the pleasantness of their days," said she, interrupting him. "It is a pity that there should be so little charity abroad." "Charity should begin at home," said he, and he was proceeding to explain that he, as a clergyman, would not be what she would call charitable at the expense of those principles which he considered it his duty to teach, when he remembered that it would be worse than vain to argue on such a matter with the future wife of Mr. Slope. "But you are just leaving us," he continued, "and I will not weary your last hour with another lecture. As it is, I fear I have given you too many." "You should practice as well as preach, Mr. Arabin?" "Undoubtedly I should. So should we all. All of us who presume to teach are bound to do our utmost towards fulfilling our own lessons. I thoroughly allow my deficiency in doing so, but I do not quite know now to what you allude. Have you any special reason for telling me now that I should practice as well as preach?" Eleanor made no answer. She longed to let him know the cause of her anger, to upbraid him for speaking of her disrespectfully, and then at last to forgive him, and so part friends. She felt that she would be unhappy to leave him in her present frame of mind, but yet she could hardly bring herself to speak to him of Mr. Slope. And how could she allude to the innuendo thrown out by the Archdeacon, and thrown out, as she believed, at the instigation of Mr. Arabin? She wanted to make him know that he was wrong, to make him aware that he had ill-treated her, in order that the sweetness of her forgiveness might be enhanced. She felt that she liked him too well to be contented to part with him in displeasure, and yet she could not get over her deep displeasure without some explanation, some acknowledgment on his part, some assurance that he would never again so sin against her. "Why do you tell me that I should practice what I preach?" continued he. "All men should do so." "Certainly. That is, as it were, understood and acknowledged. But you do not say so to all men, or to all clergymen. The advice, good as it is not given except in allusion to some special deficiency. If you will tell me my special deficiency, I will endeavour to profit by the advice." She paused for a while, and then, looking full in his face, she said, "You are not bold enough, Mr. Arabin, to speak out to me openly and plainly, and yet you expect me, a woman, to speak openly to you. Why did you speak calumny of me to Dr. Grantley behind my back?" "Calumny?" said he, and his whole face became suffused with blood. "What calumny? If I had spoken calumny of you, I will beg your pardon, and his to whom I spoke it. Excuse me. And God's pardon also. But what calumny have I spoken of you to Dr. Grantley?" She also blushed deeply. She could not bring herself to ask him whether he had not spoken of her as another man's wife. "You know that best yourself," said she, "but I ask you as a man of honour, if you have not spoken of me as you would not have spoken of your own sister, or rather I will not ask you," she continued, finding that he did not immediately answer her, "I will not put you to the necessity of answering such a question. Dr. Grantley has told me what you said." "Dr. Grantley certainly asked me for my advice, and I gave it. He asked me—" "I know he did, Mr. Arabin. He asked you whether he would be doing right to receive me at Plumstead if I continued my acquaintance with a gentleman who happens to be personally disagreeable to yourself and to him." "You are mistaken, Mrs. Bold. I have no personal knowledge of Mr. Slope. I never met him in my life." "You are not the less individually hostile to him. It is not for me to question the propriety of your enmity, but I had a right to expect that my name should not have been mixed up in your hostilities. This has been done, and been done by you in a manner the most injurious and the most distressing to me as a woman. I must confess, Mr. Arabin, that from you I expected a different sort of usage." As she spoke, she with difficulty restrained her tears, but she did restrain them. Had she given way and sobbed aloud, as in such cases a woman should do, he would have melted at once, implored her pardon, perhaps knelt at her feet and declared his love. Everything would have been explained, and Eleanor would have gone back to Barchester with a contented mind. How easily would she have forgiven and forgotten the Archdeacon's suspicions had she but heard the whole truth from Mr. Arabin. But then there would have been my novel. She did not cry, and Mr. Arabin did not melt. "You do me an injustice," said he. "My advice was asked by Dr. Grantley, and I was obliged to give it." "Dr. Grantley has been most officious, most impertinent. I have as complete a right to form my acquaintance as he has to form his. What would you have said had I consulted you as to the propriety of my banishing Dr. Grantley from my house because he knows Lord Tattenham Corner? I am sure Lord Tattenham is quite as objectionable an acquaintance for a clergyman as Mr. Slope is for a clergyman's daughter." "I do not know Lord Tattenham Corner." "No, but Dr. Grantley does. It is nothing to me if he knows all the young lords on every race-course in England. I shall not interfere with him, nor shall he with me." "I am sorry to differ with you, Mrs. Bold, but as you have spoken to me on this matter, and especially as you blame me for what little I said on the subject, I must tell you that I do differ from you. Dr. Grantley's position as a man in the world gives him a right to choose his own acquaintances, subject to certain influences. If he chooses them badly, those influences will be used. If he consorts with persons unsuitable to him, his bishop will interfere. What the bishop is to Dr. Grantley is to you." "I deny it. I utterly deny it," said Eleanor, jumping from her seat and literally flashing before Mr. Arabin as she stood on the drawing-room floor. He had never seen her so excited. He had never seen her look half so beautiful. "I utterly deny it," said she. "Dr. Grantley has no sort of jurisdiction over me whatsoever. Do you and he forget that I am not altogether alone in the world? Do you forget that I have a father? Dr. Grantley, I believe, always has forgotten it. From you, Mr. Arabin," she continued, "I would have listened to advice, because I should have expected it to have been given as one friend may advise another, not as a schoolmaster gives an order to a pupil. I might have differed from you. On this matter I should have done so, but had you spoken to me in your usual manner and with your usual freedom, I should not have been angry. But now, was it manly of you, Mr. Arabin, to speak of me in this way? So disrespectful, so... I cannot bring myself to repeat what you said. You must understand what I feel. Was it just of you to speak of me in such a way, and to advise my sister's husband to turn me out of my sister's house, because I chose to know a man of whose doctrine you disapprove? I have no alternative left to me, Mrs. Bold, said he, standing with his back to the fireplace, looking down intently at the carpet pattern, and speaking with a slow, measured voice, but to tell you plainly what did take place between me and Dr. Grantley. Well, said she, finding that he paused for a moment. I am afraid that what I may say may pain you. It cannot well do so more than what you have already done, said she. Dr. Grantley asked me whether I thought it would be prudent for him to receive you in his house as the wife of Mr. Slope, and I told him that I thought it would be imprudent. Believing it to be utterly impossible that Mr. Slope and... Thank you, Mr. Arabin, that is sufficient. I do not want to know your reasons, said she, speaking with a terribly calm voice. I have shown to this gentleman the commonplace civility of a neighbour, and because I have done so, because I have not indulged against him in all the rancour and hatred which you and Dr. Grantley consider due to all clergymen who do not agree with yourselves, you conclude that I am to marry him? Or rather, you do not conclude so. No rational man could really come to such an outrageous conclusion without better ground. You have not thought so. But as I am in a position in which such an accusation must be peculiarly painful, it is made in order that I may be terrified into hostility against this enemy of yours. As she finished speaking, she walked to the drawing-room window and stepped out into the garden. Mr. Arabin was left in the room, still occupied in counting the pattern on the carpet. He had, however, distinctly heard and accurately marked every word that she had spoken. Was it not clear from what she had said that the Archdeacon had been wrong in imputing to her any attachment to Mr. Slope? Was it not clear that Eleanor was still free to make another choice? It may seem strange that he should for a moment have had a doubt, and yet he did doubt. She had not absolutely denied the charge. She had not expressly said that it was untrue. Mr. Arabin understood little of the nature of a woman's feelings, or he would have known how improbable it was that she should make any clearer declaration than she had done. Few men do understand the nature of a woman's heart, till years have robbed such understanding of its value. And it is well that it should be so, or men would triumph too easily. Mr. Arabin stood, counting the carpet, unhappy, wretchedly unhappy at the hard words that had been spoken to him, and yet happy, exquisitely happy, as he thought that after all the woman whom he so regarded was not to become the wife of the man whom he so much disliked. As he stood there, he began to be aware that he was himself in love. 40 years had passed over his head, and as yet women's beauty had never given him an uneasy hour. His present hour was very uneasy. Not that he remained there for half or a quarter of that time. In spite of what Eleanor had said, Mr. Arabin was, in truth, a manly man. Having ascertained that he loved this woman, and having now reason to believe that she was free to receive his love, at least if she pleased to do so, he followed her into the garden to make such wooing as he could. He was not long in finding her. She was walking to and fro beneath the avenue of elms that stood in the Archdeacon's grounds, skirting the churchyard. What had passed between her and Mr. Arabin had not, alas, tended to lessen the acerbity of her spirit. She was very angry, more angry with him than with anyone. How could he have so misunderstood her? She had been so intimate with him, had allowed him such latitude in what he had chosen to say to her, had complied with his ideas, cherished his views, fostered his precepts, cared for his comforts, made much of him in every way in which a pretty woman can make much of an unmarried man without committing herself or her feelings. She had been doing this, and while she had been doing it, he had regarded her as the affianced wife of another man. As she passed along the avenue, every now and then an unbidden tear would force itself on her cheek, and as she raised her hand to brush it away, she stamped with her little foot upon the sward with very spite to think that she had been so treated. Mr. Arabin was very near to her when she first saw him, and she turned short round and retraced her steps down the avenue, trying to rid her cheeks of all trace of the telltale tears. It was a needless endeavour, for Mr. Arabin was in such a state of mind that hardly allowed him to observe such trifles. He followed her down the walk, and overtook her just as she reached the end of it. He had not considered how he would address her. He had not thought what he would say. He had only felt that it was wretchedness to him to quarrel with her, and that it would be happiness to be allowed to love her. And yet he would not lower himself by asking her pardon. He had done her no wrong. He had not calumniated her, not injured her, as she had accused him of doing. He could not confess sins of which he had not been guilty. He could only let the past be the past, and ask her as to her and his hopes for the future. "I hope we are not to part as enemies," said he. "There shall be no enmity on my part," said Eleanor. "I endeavour to avoid all enmities. It would be a hollow pretence were I to say that there can be true friendship between us after what has just passed. People cannot make their friends of those whom they despise." "And am I despised?" "I must have been so before you could have spoken of me as you did. And I was deceived, cruelly deceived. I believed that you thought well of me. I believed that you esteemed me." "Thought well of you and esteemed you?" said he. "In justifying myself before you, I must use stronger words than those." He paused for a moment, and Eleanor's heart beat with painful violence within her bosom as she waited for him to go on. "I have do esteem you, as I never yet esteemed any woman. Think well of you, I never thought to think so well, so much of any human creature. Speak calumny of you, insult you, wilfully injure you. I wish it were my privilege to shield you more from calumny, insult and injury. Calumny! Ah me, 'twere almost better that it were so. Better than to worship with a sinful worship, sinful and vain also." And then he walked along beside her, with his hands clasped behind his back, looking down on the grass beneath his feet, and utterly at a loss how to express his meaning. And Eleanor walked beside him, determined at least to give him no assistance. "Ah me," he uttered at last, speaking rather to himself than to her. "Ah me, these Plumstead walks were pleasant enough if one could have but heart's ease. but without that the dull, dead stones of Oxford were far preferable, and St. Ewolds too. Mrs. Bold, I am beginning to think that I mistook myself when I came hither. A Romish priest now would have escaped all this. Oh, Father of Heaven, how good for us would it be if thou couldst vouchsafe to us a certain rule. And have we not a certain rule, Mr. Arabin? Yes, yes, surely. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. But what is temptation? What is evil? Is this evil? Is this temptation? Poor Mr. Arabin. It would not come out of him, that deep, true love of his. He could not bring himself to utter it in plain language that would require and demand an answer. He knew not how to say to the woman by his side, since the fact is that you do not love that other man, that you are not to be his wife. Can you love me? Will you be my wife? These were the words which were in his heart, but with all his sighs he could not draw them to his lips. He would have given anything, everything, for power to ask this simple question, but, glib as was his tongue in pulpits and on platforms, now he could not find a word wherewith to express the plain wish of his heart. And yet Eleanor understood him as thoroughly as though he had declared his passion with all the elegant fluency of a practised Lothario. With a woman's instinct she followed every bend of his mind, as he spoke of the pleasantness of Plumstead and the stones of Oxford, as he alluded to the safety of the Romish priest and the hidden perils of temptation. She knew that it all meant love. She knew that this man at her side, this accomplished scholar, this practised orator, this great polemical combatant, was striving, and striving in vain, to tell her that his heart was no longer his own. She knew this, and felt a sort of joy in knowing it, and yet she would not come to his aid. He had offended her deeply, had treated her unworthily, the more unworthily seeing that he had learnt to love her, and Eleanor could not bring herself to abandon her revenge. She did not ask herself whether or no she would ultimately accept his love. She did not even acknowledge to herself that she now perceived it with pleasure. At the present moment it did not touch her heart. It merely appeased her pride and flattered her vanity. Mr. Arabin had dared to associate her name with that of Mr. Slope, and now her spirit was soothed by finding that he would fain associate it with his own. And so she walked on beside him, inhaling incense, but giving out no sweetness in return. "Answer me this," said Mr. Arabin, stopping suddenly in his walk and stepping forward so that he faced his companion. "Answer me this one question. You do not love Mr. Slope? You do not intend to be his wife?" Mr. Arabin certainly did not go the right way to win such a woman as Eleanor Bold. Just as her wrath was evaporating, as it was disappearing before the true warmth of his untold love, he rekindled it by a most useless repetition of his original sin. Had he known what he was about, he should never have mentioned Mr. Slope's name before Eleanor Bold till he had made her all his own. Then, and not till then, he might have talked of Mr. Slope with as much triumph as he chose. "I shall answer no such question," said she, "and what is more, I must tell you that nothing can justify your asking it. Good morning." And so saying, she stepped proudly across the lawn, and, passing through the drawing-room window, joined her father and sister at lunch in the dining-room. Half an hour afterwards she was in the carriage, and so she left Plumstead without again seeing Mr. Arabin. His walk was long and sad among the sombre trees that overshadowed the churchyard. He left the Archdeacon's grounds that he might escape attention, and sauntered among the green hillocks under which lay at rest so many of the once loving swains and forgotten beauties of Plumstead. To his ears, Eleanor's last words sounded like a knell never to be reversed. He could not comprehend that she might be angry with him, indignant with him, remorseless with him, and yet love him. He could not make up his mind whether or no Mr. Slope was in truth a favoured rival. If not, why should she not have answered his question? Poor Mr. Arabin, untaught, illiterate, boorish, ignorant man, that at 40 years of age you should know so little of the workings of a woman's heart. And that is where we shall take a break. I hope you've enjoyed so far. I'm a fool. I was talking and I clicked on the break. Go to break related things. See you back in about 5 minutes. Okay, bye for now. And we're back, everybody. Now yeah, full on just clicked on the thing and just carried on talking. Doing well. Brain is not braining. What I was saying when you couldn't hear me was that, yes, I agree. Just if everybody actually communicated a little bit better in this, I think, I think we might, get over some of these problems. I just maybe just, don't just assume. Maybe talk to each other, everybody. Maybe. So, yes. They're all doing very well. So very well. Yeah, I hope we've had a good break, done break-related things. We might just do one more chapter tonight. So we might end up ending early, I think. This probably won't take very long, just because the chapter after that is a lot longer, and yeah, that'll go on. That would go on quite a lot longer. So yeah, it's slightly annoying. We're at this. It seems to be at the stage in this book where we've got really fairly short chapters and then really long ones. So yeah, not ideal. But I hope everybody would be okay with us ending just a little bit earlier tonight. So you don't often think men, because different people are very different, but yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is classic kind of, this is how women think and this is how men think, which is obviously not actually the thing, but yeah, this is very much like if men would just assume that they don't necessarily know everything, then this whole problem would be solved, I think. But yes, yeah, we're just going to read one more chapter. So yeah, I hope we're all doing all right, and we shall continue with chapter 31. The Bishop's Library. And thus the pleasant party at Plumstead was broken up. It had been a very pleasant party as long as they had all remained in good humour with one another. Mrs. Grantley had felt her house to be gayer and brighter than it had been for many a long day. The Archdeacon had been aware that the month had passed pleasantly, without attributing the pleasure to any other special merits than those of his own hospitality. Within 3 or 4 days of Eleanor's departure, Mr. Harding had also returned. And Mr. Arabin had gone to Oxford to spend 1 week there previous to his settling at the vicarage of St. Ewolds. He had gone laden with many messages to Dr. Gwynne touching the iniquity of the doings in Barchester Palace, and the peril in which it was believed the hospital still stood, in spite of the assurances contained in Mr. Slope's inauspicious letter. During Eleanor's drive into Barchester, she had not much opportunity of reflecting on Mr. Arabin. She had been constrained to divert her mind both from his sins and his love by the necessity of conversing with her sister and maintaining the appearance of parting with her on good terms. When the carriage reached her own door, and while she was in the act of giving her last kiss to her sister and nieces, Mary Bold ran out and exclaimed, Eleanor, have you heard? Oh, Mrs. Grantley, have you heard what has happened? The poor Dean!" "Good heavens," said Mrs. Grantley, what has happened?" "This morning at 9 he had a fit of apoplexy, and he has not spoken since. I very much fear that by this time he is no more." Mrs. Grantley had been very intimate with the Dean, and was therefore much shocked. Eleanor had not known him so well. Nevertheless, she was sufficiently acquainted with his person and manners to feel startled, and grieved also, at the tidings she now received. "I will go at once to the deanery," said Mrs. Grantley. "The Archdeacon, I am sure, will be there. If there is any news to send you, I will let Thomas call before he leaves town." And so the carriage drove off, leaving Eleanor and her baby with Mary Bold. Mrs. Grantley had been quite right. The Archdeacon was at the deanery. He had come into Barchester that morning by himself, not caring to intrude himself upon Eleanor, and he also immediately on his arrival had heard of the Dean's fit. There was, as we have before said, a library or reading room connecting the cathedral with the Dean's house. This was generally called the Bishop's Library, because a certain Bishop of Barchester was supposed to have added it to the cathedral. It was built immediately over a portion of the cloisters, and a flight of stairs descended from it into the room in which the cathedral clergymen put their surplices on and off. As it also opened directly into the Dean's house, it was the passage through which that dignitary usually went to his public devotions. Who had or had not the right of entry into it, it might be difficult to say, but the people of Barchester believed that it belonged to the Dean, and the clergymen of Barchester believed that it belonged to the chapter. On the morning in question, most of the resident clergymen who constituted the chapter, and some few others, were here assembled, and among them, as usual, the Archdeacon towered with high authority. He had heard of the Dean's fit before he was over the bridge which led into the town, and had at once come to the well-known clerical trysting place. He had been there by 11 o'clock, and had remained ever since. From time to time the medical men who had been called in came through from the deanery into the library, uttered little bulletins, and then returned. There was, it appears, very little hope of the old man's rallying. Indeed, no hope of anything like a final recovery. The only question was whether he must die at once speechless, unconscious, stricken to death by his first heavy fit, or whether by due aid of medical skill he might not be so far brought back to this world as to become conscious of his state, and enabled to address one prayer to his Maker before he was called to meet him face to face at the judgment seat. Sir Omicron Pye had been sent for from London. That great man had shown himself a wonderful adept at keeping life still moving within an old man's heart in the case of good old Bishop Grantley, and it might be reasonably expected that he would be equally successful with a dean. In the meantime, Dr. Filgrave and Mr. Rarechild were doing their best, and poor Miss Trefoil sat at the head of her father's bed, longing, as in such cases daughters do long, to be allowed to do something to show her love, if it were only to chafe his feet with her hands, or wait in menial offices on those autocratic doctors, anything so that now in the time of need she might be of use. The Archdeacon alone of the attendant clergy had been admitted for a moment into the sick man's chamber. He had crept in with creaking shoes, had said with a smothered voice a word of consolation to the sorrowing daughter, had looked on the distorted face of his old friend with solemn but yet eager scrutinizing eye, as though he said in his heart, "And so some day it will probably be with me." And then, having whispered an unmeaning word or two to the doctors, had creaked his way back again into the library. "He'll never speak again, I fear," said the Archdeacon, as he noiselessly closed the door, as though the unconscious dying man, from whom all sense had fled, would have heard in his distant chamber the spring of the lock which was now so carefully handled. "Indeed? Indeed, is he so bad?" said the meagre little prebendary, turning over in his own mind all the probable candidates for the deanery, and wondering whether the Archdeacon would think it worth his while to accept it. The fit must have been very violent. "When a man over 70 has a stroke of apoplexy, it seldom comes very lightly," said the burly Chancellor. "He was an excellent, sweet-tempered man," said one of the vicar's choral. "Heaven knows how we shall repair his loss." "He was indeed," said a minor canon, "and a great blessing to all those privileged to take a share of the services of our cathedral. I suppose the government will appoint Mr. Archdeacon. I trust we may have no stranger." "We will not talk about his successor," said the Archdeacon, "while there is yet hope." "Oh, no, of course not," said the Minor Canon. "It would be exceedingly indecorous, but—" "I know of no man," said the meagre little prebendary, "than who has better interest with the present government than Mr. Slope." "Mr. Slope," said 2 or 3 at once, almost sotto voce. "Mr. Slope, Dean of Barchester." "Pooh!" exclaimed the burly Chancellor. "The bishop would do anything for him," said the little prebendary. "And so would Mrs. Proudie," said the vicar choral. "Pooh!" said the Chancellor. The Archdeacon had almost turned pale at the idea. What if Mr. Slope should become Dean of Barchester? To be sure, there was no adequate ground, indeed no ground at all, for presuming that such a desecration could even be contemplated. But nevertheless it was on the cards. Dr. Proudie had interest with the government, and the man carried, as it were, Dr. Proudie in his pocket. How should they all conduct themselves if Mr. Slope were to become Dean of Barchester? The bare idea for a moment struck Dr. Grantley dumb. "It would certainly not be very pleasant for us to have Mr. Slope at the deanery," said the little prebendary, chuckling inwardly at the evident consternation which his surmise had created. "About as pleasant and as probable as having you in the palace," said the Chancellor. "I should think such an appointment highly improbable," said the Minor Canon, "and moreover extremely injudicious. Should not you, Mr. Archdeacon?" I should presume such a thing to be quite out of the question," said the Archdeacon. "But at the present moment I am thinking rather of our poor friend who is lying so near us than of Mr. Slope." Of course," said the vicar choral, with a very solemn air. "Of course you are. So are we all. Poor Dr. Trefoil, the best of men, but—" "It's the most comfortable dean's residence in England," said a second prebendary. 15 acres in the grounds. It is better than many of the bishop's palaces." "And a full 2,000 a year," said the meagre doctor. "It is cut down to 1,200, said the Chancellor. "No," said the second prebendary, "it is to be 15. A special case was made." "No such thing," said the Chancellor. "You'll find I'm right," said the prebendary. "I'm sure I read it in the report," said the Minor Canon. "Nonsense," said the Chancellor. "They couldn't do it. There were to be no exceptions but London and Durham." "And Canterbury and York," said the vicar choral modestly. "What do you say, Dr. Grantley?" said the meagre little doctor. "Say about what?" said the Archdeacon, who had been looking as though he were thinking about his friend the Dean, but who had been in reality thinking about Mr. Slope. "What is the next Dean to have, 12 or 15? 12, said the Archdeacon authoritatively, thereby putting an end at once to all doubt and dispute among his subordinates as far as that subject was concerned. "Well, I certainly thought it was 15, said the Minor Canon. "Pooh!" said the burly Chancellor. At this moment the door opened, and in came Dr. Filgrave. "How is he? Is he conscious? Can he speak? I hope not dead. No worse news, Doctor, I trust. I trust something better, Doctor," said half a dozen voices all at once, each in a tone of extremest anxiety. It was pleasant to see how popular the good old Dean was among his clergy. "No change, gentlemen, not the slightest change, but a telegraphic message has arrived. Sir Omicron Pi will be here by the 9:15 p.m. train. If any man can do anything, Sir Omicron Pi will do it. But all that skill can do has been done." "We are sure of that, Dr. Filgrave. We are sure of that, Dr. Filgrave," said the Archdeacon. "We are quite sure of that. But yet, you know—" "Oh, quite right," said the doctor, "quite right. I should have done just the same. I advised it at once. I said to Rare Child at once that with such a life and such a man, Sir Omicron should be summoned. Of course I knew expense was nothing. So distinguished, you know, and so popular. Nevertheless, all that human skill can do has been done. Just at this period, Mrs. Grantley's carriage drove into the close, and the Archdeacon went down to confirm the news which he had heard before. By the 9:15 p.m. train, Sir Omicron Pie did arrive, and in the course of the night a sort of consciousness returned to the poor old Dean. Whether this was due to Sir Omicron Pie is a question on which it may be well not to offer an opinion. Dr. Filgrave was very clear in his own mind, but Sir Omicron himself is thought to have differed from that learned doctor. At any rate, Sir Omicron expressed an opinion that the Dean had yet some days to live. For the 8 or 10 next days, accordingly, the poor Dean remained in the same state, half conscious and half comatose, and the attendant clergy began to think that no new appointment would be necessary for some few months to come. And that is where we shall end for tonight. Thank you for listening. And yes, the names in this are rather good. Dr. Filgrave, I mean, pretty great. And also Sir Omicron Pie. I mean, what a name. It does absolutely sound like something from, like, I don't know, Hitchhikers. Or something like that. But yes, I hope you'll all enjoy it. I certainly did. This is going to go so badly, isn't it? Slope's going to become the Dean of Barchester, isn't he? Oh, it's all going to go well. It's all going to be fine. It's all going to be absolutely fine. But yes, I don't think I shall raid over tonight because Stephen is doing blueprints and it feels kind of bad to raid over and then just run because we don't want to see spoilers. So, yeah, I think I shall end there. Oh, excuse me. But yes, thank you all very much indeed for being here. I will not be back next Wednesday, unfortunately. I will be in Paris. So there won't be a next Wednesday stream, but in theory Sam will be back on Saturday for some short stories, I believe. So yeah, look forward to that. Thanks for the delicious drama. Oh, you're so welcome. But yes, go take care of yourselves, and yeah, we shall see you again soon. Thank you very much, and good night. Goodbye.